Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review and I'll be having a look at 13 Ghosts. So 13 Ghosts is a movie when I first saw it, I actually quite enjoyed it. It's very inventive, all the ghosts look very unique and kind of very interesting looking, but now watching it I actually think maybe this film isn't quite as good as I once thought. So basically the story here focuses around a family where the mother, the wife ultimately was killed in a kind of fire, and the husband's kind of just depressed, and he's played by, I think the guy's name is Tony Shalhoub or something. And basically they inherit this kind of house from this kind of long lost uncle, and it appears in a kind of prologue that this uncle has some kind of he's some kind of supernatural hunter ultimately, and he's collecting spirits. The family of course don't know this at this point. Anyway, they inherit this house which is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's not this kind of old haunted house like you see in a lot of these sort of horror films. It's actually a kind of very modern looking, very large house, but it's all kind of made of glass and kind of lots of mechanics and things in there. It looks kind of weird, very Art Deco in a lot of ways. And basically, it turns out that this house actually houses a whole bunch of spirits, and that there's a plan by the uncle played by F. Murray Abraham, and who is to unleash this door to hell. And to do so, he needs all this certain amount of spirits and a 13th ghost, which has to be a kind of willing sacrifice. And ultimately, he's trying to dupe his sort of nephew into kind of sacrificing himself ultimately to unleash hell. And what we've got ultimately is a kind of almost like a ghostly chase movie. It's this sort of family and a kind of other people who sort of happen to end up in the house are essentially chased around by this kind of like variety of different spooks. So the first thing this story I'll talk about is the actual plot itself. This plot is very, very ridiculous when you actually give it some thoughts, and it's overly convoluted. I mean, you know, the motivation certainly of F. Murray Abraham's character, they're just unclear about why he'd be wanting to do the sort of unleash the escape to hell, and you know, how's he managed to sort of get all this sort of things together and things like that. And the actual plot of ultimately this kind of like this mechanical house or closing doors and things it's just a bit ridiculous. There's this like massive machine in the house which is kind of powering ultimately all this kind of like this supernatural engine. So the plot is very stupid. The cast is odd. Like I said, I guess the main protagonist, and I forget the actor's name, is Tony Shalhoub. I forget his name, sorry. And you know, he's the dad ultimately. He's got, I think, Shannon Elizabeth is his sort of older daughter and this sort of young kid, and this kind of nanny. And one thing I found quite amusing is that in the sort of beginning, we sort of told this family is like all sort of past due and all their debt and everything like that, and yet they have a nanny, but they have a daughter old enough to be able to look after the younger son. Yeah, but they have a living nanny. You know, how the hell why are they having a living nanny if they are that much in debt? I thought it's just stupid. It's just basically another person to have into this house ultimately. Anyway, it's the ghosts themselves. They're interesting looking, but they kind of look a bit more like sort of invented zombies. They all have very unique. They have kind of features about how they sort of died. One's got for example sort of rail spikes sort of put through his, you know, all over his body, and the other one's got you know, sort of cage around the head like a mental asylum looking character. So they're interesting, but they're not maybe that particularly spooky. They kind of look more like, sort of, like I say, more like zombies really. And the way they're shot, basically, you can only see them if you wear these sort of particular sort of style of glasses. And I guess it makes for some interesting visuals, but at the end of the day, it comes across more like a kind of just an action film, and it doesn't really work as a horror film. I don't think it's not ever really a particularly scary film at all. There's one sort of gore shot, but that's basically it. There's not a particularly high body count really. So all in all, it's probably a disappointing horror film, I have to say. It's maybe interesting to see some of the designs that they've used here, both for the house and actually for this kind of these sort of ghostly creatures themselves. And there's a lot. The main thing here, the plot is ridiculous. The plot is just so stupid when you give it some thought. And they've kind of tried to sort of wrap it up in this strange sort of mechanical plot, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense when you actually apply logic to it. So I'm going to give this one a 3.5 out of 10. I kind of liked it back in the day, but looking back now, there's so much wrong with this film, I can't give it a high mark than that. What are your thoughts on it? Leave me a comment, and I will look forward to you next time. Bye for now.